Good morning, Indy fans. Well, it's Monday, the 22nd of March 2021, and it's time for DaviePHD's Mythbusters, episode 29. In these videos, I bust the myths that surround Scottish independence. And this week is a little different. You could be forgiven for thinking that if a person voted Tory, they voted Conservative. But you'd be wrong. You confused? Then allow me to explain. If I were to point to someone and say the following: this person is averse to change or innovation, holds traditional values, favours free enterprise, private ownership, and has socially traditional ideas, you wouldn't immediately think that person was a bad person, would you? You may not be like them yourself, you may not, share their views, you may be the polar opposite of them, but you wouldn't think they were a bad person. So it may surprise you to learn that the description I have just given is the dictionary definition of a conservative. Now, when I say that, I'm not talking about conservative as in a member of the UK Conservative and Unionist Party or its Scots branch office. I'm talking about a person who holds conservative values, both personal and political. So for the purposes of this video, I will describe people with these values as conservative and the political party as Tories. Now, it kind of holds water that a person who is conservative should vote Tory. But let's look at those conservative values one by one and see if they still fit the Tory party. Let's start with being averse to change or innovation. I suppose the biggest illustration of this disparity is Europe. Firstly, as it was a Tory government that took us into the EEC, which then morphed into the European Union, that was a massive material change for the UK. And after just over 4 decades of membership and getting used to it, there was a Tory government who took us out of the European Union. The one thing they don't want to change is their relationship with Scotland. So that's 2 to 1 against for being change averse. I'm calling that conservative value number 1 no longer a Tory value. Moving on to holding traditional values and socially traditional ideas. Well, let's look at that in the context of their leader. Can a Tory party led by Boris Johnson really claim any moral high ground? This is, after all, the man who's lied to his bosses, a newspaper editor, a former Tory leader, and the Queen. He's fabricated quotes as a journalist and even arranged to have someone beaten up in the past. He's been married twice but has had numerous extramarital affairs and an indeterminate number of children. Boris is currently living with a woman who bore him a child out of wedlock. Admittedly, they're engaged, so he's already working on ex-wife number 3. Now, I'm not criticising Boris and Carrie for their personal circumstances. It's the 21st century after all, and I actually couldn't give less of a shit if I tried. But with all of this information already in the public domain, the Tory party membership chose Boris Johnson of their own free will to lead them. This despite his very obvious character flaws and numerous personal breaches of what we all consider traditional conservative values. And all this despite there being other and more honourable people in contention for the role of party leader and ultimately Prime Minister. So by this measure, traditional conservative values are the second no longer Tory values. Favouring free enterprise. Now, in the heady days of the 1980s, when young stockbrokers were reversing their Porsches up trees in Margaret Thatcher's Britain, I would have given them this hands down. But the 80s ended over 30 years ago, and a lot has changed since then. Due to Brexit, £103 trillion in assets are now being traded on European trading floors that were being traded in London just last year. JP Morgan alone took £260 billion out of the UK to Frankfurt on the day before the transition period ended. The Tories have just recently imposed something on us which cost free enterprise 40.1% of European Union exports in just 1 month. 63% of live animal exports and 83% of fish and shellfish exports gone. And the Tory government advice to affected businesses is to set up European Union hubs, taking jobs and investment out of the UK to a trading bloc we've just left. We also hear a lot about all the free trade deals we've done with the rest of the world since leaving the UK. But think back to the UK-Japan deal that almost fell apart because of cheese. Now Liz Truss, the International Trade Secretary, has often been touted as the star of Brexit, and she stuck to her guns and made sure we could sell cheese in Japan. But at this price, who's going to buy it? Now, free trade deals have to have favourable terms before they can be advantageous to traders. And every European Union trade deal is negotiated under the proviso that no party can give any other partner more favourable terms than the European Union. So if a nation has a European Union trade deal, it's impossible for the UK to get a better deal. So in trade terms, Brexit was pointless. In fact, it was worse than pointless, as the 40.1% drop in exports to Europe demonstrates. The only free enterprises that have prospered under Boris Johnson's stewardship are the enterprises that have donated to the Tories, are friends of the Tories, or are actually owned by the Tories. The coronavirus pandemic being the most egregious spell of cronyism we have ever seen. So while Conservatives may favour free enterprise, the Tories only favour certain free enterprises, namely those that are financing their campaigns and filling their bank accounts. So in summary, if being averse to change or innovation and holding traditional values, favouring free enterprise, private ownership and having socially traditional ideas is conservative, then it's clear that the Tories are no longer conservative. So if the Tories aren't conservative, what are they now? Are they Nazis or fascists? Well, this may seem like an extreme jump, but look at the evidence. This week we saw a law come into force that would make life difficult for gypsy travellers. Priti Patel was the driving force behind this. Now, have a wee look at this poem written by Martin Niemöller. He's a Lutheran pastor in Nazi Germany, initially a Hitler supporter and latterly an opponent. First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. But then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Now the premise of this poem is right, but the Nazis actually moved against gypsies first, just like the Tories just have. Now if you still think this is wide of the mark, look at how things are going. The promotion of flag-waving nationalism, increase in our military spending. The parallels are all there. Perhaps they're libertarians. What's one of them, I hear you ask? Well, libertarianism is a political philosophy that upholds liberty as a core principle. Minimum government, maximum freedom. There is a libertarian party in America and some other countries, though to my knowledge there's never been a long-term libertarian government. I suppose the mindset can be best illustrated by the US attitude to gun control. Outwardly it seems that their right to bear arms is more important to libertarians than protecting people from the harm that right causes. Libertarians can appear right-wing when it comes to economic factors, but when it comes to societal factors they can appear left-wing, so gay marriage, no marriage, multiculturalism would all be seen as acceptable. So the Tories, having BAME MPs and ministers, and even a gay leader for a while in Scotland, but still pursuing a right-wing economic agenda, maybe more libertarian than conservative. However badly I may think of the Tories, I don't really believe they're Nazis or fascists, but I will be keeping a close eye on that Home Office to see if another group appears in their sights, because no one believed the Nazis were either, until it was too late. But it is my considered opinion that they are closer to being libertarians than being conservatives. So why is it important? Isn't this just semantics? Well, you see, guys, big government is what gives us the welfare state, the NHS, state-funded schools, etc. Libertarian government would threaten that in favour of private provision. Conservatives are currently actually voting for an increasingly libertarian party because they're named as conservatives, and I see that as slightly fraudulent. There's never been a long-term successful libertarian government anywhere. As Brexit has proved that British exceptionalism is actually an illusion, there's no reason to believe that we could sustain the first one. It's fair to say I'm not a fan of the current incarnation of the Tory party, and I believe that labelling the Tories as conservative actually devalues the word. Being a conservative is a legitimate and honourable political and social position. It's not one I share, but it is both legitimate and honourable. It's just a shame that despite appearances, there is no proper Conservative party for British voters to vote for. Because people who consider themselves Conservative and vote for the Tory party on that basis are actually voting for a libertarian party and a libertarian government. Given the tailspin the Labour Party are in, there appears to be no opposition for the foreseeable future. In general, Western democracies have a right-wing party, a left-wing party, a centrist party. Sometimes there'll be smaller special interest parties too. So if you are Scottish and conservative in ideology, then the fastest way for you to achieve a truly conservative Scottish government is to vote for and help us to achieve independence. Then you won't have to vote for a UK libertarian Tory party as the closest fit. A new and properly Scottish conservative political party would undoubtedly emerge in an independent Scotland, but it would also be free of the aristocracy and old boys networks like the Bullingdon Club that have corrupted the UK version and its Scottish branch office. Because in reality, the biggest problem with the current Tory party is not the first word in their name being conservative. It's more to do with the second, third and fourth words, and unionist party. It's the fact that the Tories are unionist that's their biggest issue in Scotland, not the fact that they believe they are conservative, which they really aren't. And it is the unionist part of their name that limits their ambition to preventing an SNP majority as opposed to winning the election. Folks, thanks for watching. Please feel free to share this video with anyone you like. DaviePHD.